part has everything to do with politics. So Kathy Griffin, and comedy, right? Kathy Griffin put out a picture that's sparking all levels of reaction. People who are saying she was in the right or she was wrong. Bottom line, Cornelia, she put something out there that's controversial.
Right. So Kathy is, the picture is behind us in case you have not seen it. Kathy Griffin, comedian, took a picture with a head of someone who looks like President Donald Trump. Decapitated, a dummy head, blood all over his face. She did this in conjunction with celebrity photographer Tyler Shields, but now she is under severe fire because of the photo. So initially she posted it, and now she issued an apology, which I think we have video of, so we can take a listen to that. We can pull that up, producer Bill?
Yep.
Here we go.
I sincerely apologize. The image is too disturbing. I understand how it offends people. It wasn't funny. I get it. I asked your forgiveness, taking down the image, gonna ask the photographer to take down the image, and I begged for your forgiveness. I went too far.
So the conversation now, I went too far. So this has opened up huge dialogue. We see people on both sides of the aisle talking about this. Mainly because you didn't expect this. Nobody woke up thinking, hey, I wonder if I'm going to see Kathy Griffin holding a decapitated head of the president of the United States. And Kathy is known for pushing the envelope.
She is.
She's one of the comics that walks the line completely. But the question now is, was it too far? Should she have issued the apology? And I want to point out the photographer involved did not apologize. He said, I'm going to pull up his tweet.
Also, he's part of controversy as well. I mean, I think this is a tension for both of them. And the saying goes, right, any publicity is good publicity when you're talking about brands and you're talking about people. And she is part of the CNN New Year's Eve with her and Anderson Cooper. And it's funny and it's controversial every year. She leaned in for a kiss one year. I heard CNN last night, or I heard that CNN was considering pulling her off the show
and that's
in the coming months.
I think that at some point, you know, I know that in the past we've said, is there a line that you can cross? As a comedian, you know, if you think that there's humor in it enough to go out, you have a very specific fan base who can choose to agree or disagree with you. But I think at this point, most of the comments I've seen say that she did cross the line. And so for
even
a company like CNN to be affiliated with that in the world of politics, we're already being called fake news enough. They don't want to have, you know, this bad press. But the president also tweeted a response. And he tweeted this morning saying, Kathy Griffin should be ashamed of herself. My children, especially my 11-year-old son Barron, are having a hard time with this. Sick. So he's clearly not finding any humor in this.
I think there is a level of respect, but again, I'm not a comedian, and I'm not trying to be a comedian. That's not my brand. But there always has to be this level of respect for that level of office, right? That political power. I mean, it is whether you love him or hate him. He is the president of the United States of America, and yes, what the content that's put out there, the images that are put out there in this day and age, our kids can see, and they think, well, if someone's doing that's okay. I don't know. I mean, as a parent, I would just warn my kids that you're going to see things that you agree with, don't agree with, do what's in your best judgment, or feel what you feel, but let's talk about it. You have to have open communication these days. But I'm wondering from Cornelia, as a comedian, Dina brings up that line, that boundary. Is there a line, and is it okay to cross it? And should she have apologized?
It depends on which comedian you're talking to. Some comedians you have before social media and before this whole movement of it being what people consider PC, they don't even consider apologizing, because back in Richard Pryor's days, you could say whatever you want and nobody was holding you under the fire. There were no endorsement deals to rip from you. There was no
social media.
There was no social media. So it was a different line. But now it's just a completely different time, and a lot of things people say, you can't say what you used to say. With that said, though, what Kathy did do is open up the conversation about what we are willing to accept as the public, because this isn't the first time a president has been depicted in this light. They had President Obama in nooses setting a dummy of him on fire. This is not new. So now the conversation is being had where people who were upset about the President Obama situation are saying, okay, so now how does it feel that the person that you possibly support is now depicted in this light. And now you have people who necessarily did not care before they care now. So now everybody is pretty much coming together saying, okay, so we saw this happen before. We see it happening now. What are we going to do as a community when this happens again? Because this is not the first and this is not the last time something like this is going to happen. So what are we going to do?
Yeah, my question for all of you is, do you accept the apology as enough? Because in my opinion, sure, she can come out and apologize now that she's had all this backlash. But before all that happened, she had a very conscious decision in front of her whether or not to do this. And it went from getting the prop to getting the photographer to setting up the scene to
Very
taking the images, then to putting the image up. I mean, there were a lot of steps to get to the process of actually putting this out for the public to see. So at this point, she can be as sympathetic as she wants in that apology, and she can say, you know what, now that I see the response, I'm realizing it wasn't the best idea. But is that enough for you? I don't know. And also the Secret Service is investigating
we don't take this lightly.
They're
You're a
not
comedian,
taking it lightly.
but is this a threat to our president?
Yep, they say threats made against Secret Service protectees, aka the president, received the highest priority of all of our investigations. So, you know, what was meant to be a comical stunt, if you will, has turned into such a bigger discussion, as you said. But the photographer in this doesn't seem to be in line.
Right, and I have a piece of his statement. He said in regards to this possibly making people uncomfortable, he said, that's what art is meant to do. Some people look at it and they love it. Some people look at it and they hate it. I understand there are going to be people that hate this. It's a very touchy subject, but this is not real. We didn't kill anybody, nor do I feel anybody should be killed. It's no different from a movie. It just happens to be a still image. And that's just a piece of what he had to say about it.
This is the same, along the same lines as the conversation we had yesterday about that makeup artist who put this photo of a white woman with different colored skin using makeup and called it art, others calling it blackface.
Right.
What got us yesterday was that this makeup artist, before posting that picture, along with the picture when posting, put a caption with these red sirens saying, I know this may make some of you uncomfortable. It was something along those lines, but I'm doing this anyways as paying homage to my culture, right? The darker skin, was it Dominican or was it Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever it may be. He is a person of color, and he said that it was okay for him to do this. So this is the picture yesterday. Again, controversy being, was this considered or is this considered blackface by people? And that decision, does the person who does this, after they put that warning out there to people, can they apologize, and is that enough? In this case, the photographer or the makeup artist hadn't yet come out, right? Wasn't that as of yesterday? They hadn't come out and put a response out yesterday.
Not as of
the
yesterday.
fact that Kathy came out and responded, it's like, but you knew you were going to cause that controversy. So my question to you, Cornelia, by doing this, is it true that any publicity is good publicity in the comedy world?
Well, it depends on, in the comedy world.
Was she doing this for the likes
when
or
you
for
think
the
about
dislikes?
a true stand-up comic, in my opinion, there's no bad publicity if you are a true stand-up comic wanting to do stand-up only. Now, when you get into TV, film, different roles, endorsements, because she did, I just saw, lost an endorsement with Squatty Potty, or they pulled something from her.
Okay.
Wow.
They pulled the ads. They didn't end the contract. They just pulled the ads. When you start dipping into other genres, then the discussion comes where you kind of have to walk the line
As
and
a
you got to
business
tiptoe.
Because essentially it's like you've endorsed all these other products and they don't have to agree with you, and they don't have to show that they agree with you. They can pull your name out just as quick as anyone.
But if you're a comic and you are on the road, you're at the Improv, Laugh Factory, doesn't matter. Your fan base is your fan base. They know who you are, and once you get to a certain level, those people who are riding for you, they're going to ride for you regardless. So I don't think it will affect her bookings on the road. I don't think it's going to affect her stand-up gigs, because like I said, if you were a fan of Kathy, she's been pushing the envelope for 30 years.
Yeah, she had her own show.
This is extreme, but she's been pushing the envelope for 30 years. So if you like Kathy for pushing the envelope, you're not going to not buy a ticket to come see her at the Comedy Store. You're just not going. That's just probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to affect her money in that regard. But
because if you, like you said, if you were
TV,
riding with her in the first place, then you're going to stick with her. I mean, it's freedom of speech here.
Yeah.
She can say what she wants, and even if she apologizes, the person who took the photo is not apologizing, so you get different reactions there. You know, at the end of the day, we could say, well, they just don't care what other people think, and that has to be okay too. They don't have to apologize. The world can be against them, but they don't have to apologize. And
Yeah.
what do you guys think about that? I know
Yeah.
some people are saying, well, cut off her head. Cut off her head. That's their reaction,
And I
getting
do
very
want to
angry.
point out again, this is not the first time we've seen this.
And that's
So
actually
if
what
it-
John is referring to.
If this is your reaction now, did you have the same reaction before, and will you have the same reaction later?
So what John wrote just now is, would your conversation would have been different if it had been ahead of Obama's? Be honest. And I think
Ask yourself.
Ask yourself
Is this
that.
about
Yeah.
disrespecting the president of the United States, or is this about your like or dislike of our current president? And is that right or wrong? Because if you would be okay if that was President Obama's head, what does that say about you? Because but that wouldn't be right either. Any person's head, in my opinion, being held like that with the blood coming down isn't what I want to wake up to.
Well,
but
and
freedom of speech.
not to get too much in the weeds and to be too political, but I read something. Imagine the families of those who have been killed in the ISIS beheadings. I mean, this conversation goes so much
that
deeper.
image, that visual.
Yeah, and so when you talk about respect of the president, what about the respect of those American families and those British families and others who have had family members have this happen to them? I mean, this conversation is so much bigger than just that, but I think that Kathy Griffin definitely pushed the envelope. I personally think she did cross the line, in my opinion, and we'll see the fallout from this, if it's going to change anything in the future for her.
I just go back to that word boundaries, right? Because you think about SNL, very popular show, and when they mock our president, and they've done this to every president in the office, but this one seems to be a little different, a little deeper rooted. Is that a line that we stop at? Just mocking, but actually showing the decapitation of a head, is that where it stops? But there's no one out there saying you can or cannot do something.
And then sometimes when you think of a line, especially in comedy, you don't know the line until you cross it.
Until
and then
you
once you cross it, then you're like,
Yep.
oh shoot, there's the line.
It's all
that's what I
good
feel
until
like
it's
happens
not.
here.
That's what happened here. So again, going forward, if this happens again, then we as a collective need to address it together and not just shrug it off because maybe you like somebody, maybe you don't, get fired up. We all need to decide what we're going to do dealing with this going forward.
Christian Cavallo,
Slapping.
I did have the same reaction when they had Obama in a noose. If she had made this quote-unquote joke in one of her stand-up shows, that would be one thing. But in such a public forum, that's the line that should have not been crossed.
Okay.
So maybe that's the line. In your comedy stand-up shows, when people are buying tickets to your show to go because they're a fan of yours, can you cross that line more so publicly on Twitter? Is that irresponsible as a comedian?
And along those lines, before we wrap up, I've been to a comedy show where I was not allowed to have my cell phone in the building, and they made us put it in a little pouch with that little lock that you can't open till you leave, because what happens inside stays inside. And yes, you can speak about the things after, but the fact that that was posted so publicly, Christian, that's a great point. Is that then the line?
And
Well,
the line gets crossed. Tracy Morgan, before he got into the really bad accident, he said some things on stage, and then it put him in bad graces with the producers and the team behind 30 Rock. So even when you're on stage, you can cross that line, but again, you don't know the line until you cross it.
Be ready for the backlash should it come.